Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Go Local News Editor Kate Nagel. I'm joined today by Dr. Tonisha Pinckney, now PhD, MSCJ, CFE, MAFF. She is the Director of Criminal Justice Programs at Anna Maria College, an expert in hate groups, hate crimes, and after what we saw this past weekend and the reaction to it here across the country and both in New England, wanted to get you in to get your take. Were you surprised when you saw what happened in Charlottesville this weekend?
First, thank you for having me. I hate to say it, but I'm not surprised. Unfortunately, the direction of a lot of the animosity, a lot of the hatred in this country has been gearing toward, moving towards something like that. So unfortunately, I'm not surprised, but that doesn't mean I'm not heartbroken or saddened that it did happen.
And so how are we here in 2017? How have, especially these groups that we saw this past weekend, applying for a permit, going out with tiki torches, and then obviously we saw the altercations with other groups, knowing that they were going to be there, wanting to show up and show resistance. How have we gotten to this point?
I think we've been at this point for a while. This is, a continuation of the civil rights movement in the 60s and what they were fighting for. A lot of that anger, because of the great work of those leaders, got pushed back. So a lot of people didn't feel free to profess their hatred or profess their feeling of disenfranchisement or what have you. So unfortunately, the cycle that we've been in the news and some of the things that's gone on over the last 2 years has really allowed for those people to come out and, be proud about their hatred, something that we haven't seen in several years, in a few decades. It doesn't mean that it went away. And a lot of people, such as myself as a Black American, we know that it hasn't gone away. We know that it's been there. And, so now we're at 2017 where we're faced with the situation of actually dealing with it.
And, we heard several reactions from President Trump. The initial reaction,
Yes.
the scripted reaction, and then what we heard this week when he was at a press conference, wasn't supposed to address the issue, but he did. How important is it that the words that he says and how he contextualizes it to the country, how important is that to the rest of the country when they're listening?
First of all, when any organization, whether it be a country or a household or anything in between, when something happens, they look to their leader to tell them that it's going to be okay. And the way he responded left a lot of people wondering, is it going to be okay? And left a lot of people wondering, is this just the beginning? Even though he denounced and said that, the neo-Nazis and the KKK and other similar groups were wrong, he really didn't provide that anchor that the country needed during a time like this, that kind of that glue, that solidarity. And also, we have to be careful, or any leader has to be careful, that we don't have a situation where words can be interpreted various ways depending on who's listening. And I think that's really what we had to deal with.
We did see reaction from David Duke, who
Yes.
thanked the president for
Yes.
the statements, and as you said, it's often in the eyes and ears of the beholder. But your scholarly focus is hate groups and hate crimes. Talk with us a little bit about the alt-right. Now, of course, there have been white supremacist groups, there have been the KKK. When has this contextualization of the alt-right really come into sort of the national dialogue?
We've only started seeing or hearing that phrase in the last couple of years. Now, alt-right, to me, it's been clear that we all have different definitions of what alt-right is, but it is the combination of all of the groups that we previously named. So you have, again, the KKK, the neo-Nazi, and other fascist groups and groups that are anti-LGBT and from different socioeconomic status, but those that basically say, you know, we are the superiors, and we as white Americans, more focused as white male Americans, feel as though that they are superior and that they feel forgotten in a sense. They feel like, well, you know, the focus has left them. So they feel as though, let's get together and rise up, because over time their numbers of each one of those groups have shrunken and are relatively small. So what they've basically achieved is, let's come together. And I think really calling them the alt-right doesn't allow their message to really be understood the way it is. It almost takes the edge off of it. You know, is say, it makes them say, you know, I don't necessarily have to call myself racist or biased in any way. I'm alt-right, you know, and it gives a really smooth, kind of sugar-coated feel to it, which is very unfortunate, because some people almost respond to them as if they were, you know, similar to how we saw the rise of the Tea Party a few years ago, or some of the more liberal political groups. We're not dealing with a political group. We're dealing with a group of people who want to feel superior, and in doing that, they want to oppress or suppress others.
And I'm assuming you saw the Vice video of the journalist
Yes.
that was embedded with them and asked multiple questions. What was your reaction when you saw that video?
It was refreshing. I mean, he told the truth. He said how he felt. And I think, you know, no matter how despicable what he was saying was, how hurtful, I was even cautious of whether or not I wanted to show it to my teenage sons. It still opened up an opportunity for us to have this dialogue, because many people are in denial as to whether there are people out there who really feel that way. You know, some people still believe that, oh, that was in the past. And it's not in the past, it's very much in our present. So I am really glad that that video was out there to show everyone that, look, this is a sentiment, this is a belief that's very alive and well, and the hatred runs very deep, and the racism itself is something that has been nurtured and grown in those individuals over time.
So what now? We've heard from the president. We've seen some political repercussions and seeing members of the business council stepping away from the president to the point that he said, I'm breaking up with you, you're not breaking up with me, and I'm disbanding them. It's sort of, it's a little twofold. There's what we hear and see from the president, because there's been so much reaction about how specifically Republicans responded to it, and did they call him out for his particular language or not. But from a societal standpoint, are we going to continue to see more Charlottesville, more alt-right? There's one planned in Boston this weekend. We're talking with the Anti-Defamation League actually right after this. I do know that there's plenty of counter-protesters who are going out and to show of solidarity saying that they don't support this. Is this the new normal?
I hope it's not the new normal, but it's unfortunate that it might have to be temporarily in order to deal with the underlying issues. We do have to understand that racism goes and bigotry goes beyond shouting in the street, that they're the new crop of individuals that are spewing this venom are, people joke and say they're wearing khakis and, polo shirts, so to speak, but These are business owners. These are people who are working alongside, all of us, and they affect all of our lives. So is this the new normal? I can't say it's the new normal because it has been our reality. Protests have not stopped since, before the 60s. They've been less frequent. I think the introduction of social media has gotten the message along, so even the smaller protests are now more known. You're able to set up a protest a lot quicker. So right now, this is what our reality is, and this is where we have to go with it and what we have to do with it. Now, that said, there's no place for violence. So I hope the violent aspect of it is definitely not going to escalate. There's no place for that on either side, and I'm really proud of most of the counter protesters that are trying to march and speak out peacefully, because overall, to have two clashing violent sides would only be more detrimental to the community and send a very wrong message and further fortify the beliefs of those that are labeled alt-right.
Were you surprised, again, seeing footage in Charlottesville, seeing a lot of that violent interaction about, from the video standpoint, sort of the lack of police or security presence or intervention by authorities when this took place? Is that something that we'll see as a more on guard type of, again, Boston knows something's happening this weekend? Is that a fear that something, even the police could come in and be overkill? Were you surprised to see this go on without law enforcement really intervening when we saw all these videos?
Very much so. And I have to, first of all, let me start out by saying I have a very high regard and high respect for law enforcement, flaws and all. So with that, I also have to say that if this protest had started with those in the Black Lives Matter movement or others, I believe we would have seen a great deal more police interaction and interference. So it was surprising that torches and the level of derogatory and hateful comments could be said without the police interfering. Now, I do think in our society we've also placed law enforcement in a predicament where they're not sure how to respond. When they respond with too much military action, then it's, you're militarized, you're squashing freedom of speech. Then when they don't do enough, it's you're not protecting us. So I think we're starting to see a little bit of apprehension from law enforcement as to, well, what is the correct way to respond? But unfortunately, like I said, I was very disappointed that the level and how fast the situation escalated in Charlottesville that led to deaths of 3 people, that law enforcement didn't step in and give more control. And why that didn't happen, is still debated, but I hope that every city going forward can be prepared for it and be proactive.
And you're in academia, Anna Maria College. How long have you been there for now?
I've been there just a year.
Okay, just a year coming on in, so now going into the next one. How do you balance, what your curriculum is, research responsibilities,
right,
but especially from the classroom perspective? You are thinking that you're going to be teaching the kids and engaging, but when things are happening real time, do you have to bring it right into the classroom?
I do bring it into the classroom, and I bring it into the classroom because my students, the criminal justice students, have to have an outlet. I don't want them to go out and, for lack of a better word, do something stupid, get involved because they're angry and end up getting arrested or such. and they need a place to feel safe and to voice their concerns, and also to approach it from an academic standpoint, not just an emotional one. So if a student asks, what happened? I don't understand this. This is the first time we've ever seen it. This is the worst that this country have been. Well, I can say this is maybe the worst that you've seen in your lifetime, but let's go back and look at the historical footprints that have been left. Let's see what works, what didn't work. Let's look at the nonviolent movements versus those that are more by any means necessary. Let's, compare and contrast and talk about this so that they can feel like, first of all, their opinions matter. They can feel like they have they are learning from the experience and they're not just having something happen to them. So it's very important to include it in the curriculum. That said, I don't let it overshadow the curriculum, because ultimately they need to learn not just what's in the moment, but going forward how to be productive members in society and not just reactive. So it's included in the curriculum, it's embraced, and we still move on to make sure that they learn what they're paying to learn.
What do you have to say? I'm sure you've seen it around a lot, especially in the last few years. There's some pushback in some circles about kids on college campuses and being in safe spaces. You're on college campus, you see this and you know this, and you might hear some kind of reaction in certain circles of, oh, they're coddled, they're not really out in the real world. It's, again, 2017, you've been in academia for a while. What do you have to say to folks who might not kind of understand what sort of the campus environment is? And I know you can speak to Anna Maria. And where were you prior?
UMass Lowell, Newberry College, kind of around a little bit. But yes, there is a protective coat, so to speak, around it. But honestly, it's the real world. It's a microcosm of what's going on in the world. The difference is that we do have, all colleges for the most part have, therapists, we have, diversity leaders, we have student groups that allow students to express their concerns in a safe environment. But it's a microcosm. You're going to have a little bit of all the different thoughts and all the different views, especially in a liberal arts college. That's what it's all about. That's what part of the learning experience is. That's why it's even so important for police officers or future police officers to go to college so that they can learn different points of view. So are they coddled? Not if they're my student.
You push them hard.
I push them hard to think. We're not there to teach them what to think, just how to think. And it is a safe space, but safe doesn't mean detached. You can be safe and still very engaged. Anna Maria College, we're very focused on social justice. We're very focused on being connected to the community, volunteerism, really being out there. So you're protected, you're safe, but it's done in a way that you can be a better and more productive member of society, and so that you can be strong when you leave. It's not, you don't go from leaving home to, in the arms of a, professor, so to speak, that's going to say, oh, we're going to help you. We do help you, we support you, but we support you as you support yourself.
And let's talk, you're a doctor, again, you have, degrees, and you're at Anna Maria. I'm sure there's a research component. Are they expecting you, what's on your plate for as in addition to your class duties?
Right now I am working on finishing an extension of my dissertation, which is on children present on a scene during a domestic violence situation and police responsiveness to that. How do police respond from a social support standpoint? Do they offer materials for counseling? Do they make sure there's a shelter? How do they offer that? And then also from a more punitive standpoint of arrest, citation, and otherwise. really using that to get that information out there, not for the sake of diversity, because I do look at gender, but I look primarily at intra-racial couples and how the responsiveness is different for a intra-racial black couple versus an intra-racial white couple. But the point is to kind of look at some of our views of law enforcement's responsiveness, and also my goal with anything I do is to help train law enforcement to go beyond some of the community perceptions of them. As such, I also am on the board of directors of NAMI Central Mass, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So I've worked with the Worcester Police Department for crisis intervention training, helping law enforcement learn how to respond to suspects or community members who are dealing with mental illness. So those are the two foci for me right now.
And you've been just talking with folks since Charlottesville last weekend. I mean, who have the conversations been with? Students, professors, other professors around the country? Where have these conversations been? Everywhere? Everywhere.
I mean, standing in a supermarket. I recently put a post on my I Am More page on Facebook, and I put out there some of the things that I've faced as a Black American. And I've walked in stores and seen people dressed in KKK attire. I have, when I was younger, I would cut through the woods kind of to go to school, and a neighbor said, "Stop doing that." And it's his property, but I still cut through. Well, one morning, it's a foggy, early morning, and what do I find? I find a noose hanging from a tree. Well, that was a deterrent, but did that have to be a deterrent for a 12-year-old walking through? I had a white male professor who told me that I could never graduate. I would never get a PhD. I would never graduate. I've had people say, "Well, you're a victim of domestic violence. You're a single mother. You don't have what it takes to go to college." All of those things, and to have those things said to me, but yet, it's one of those things, the things that happen are there to make you stronger. So I have those conversations on social media so that, again, people can get it out, because I really feel as though anger bottled up is just going to fester into more hatred. We don't want where you say someone is doing something wrong and addressing a problem doesn't mean that you have to respond with hatred as well. Now, we say respond with love. Some people are not all the way there yet, to respond with love, but you can respond with a level of dignity and respect for yourself. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to respect the person's views, but you can respect that you're both human and that you don't want to make all of us look bad in that way. So a lot of the conversations have been with other Black Americans, with teenagers who are just totally bewildered and confused about what's going on. Because again, they're trying to navigate life, and they want to be, they want this hope that they're going to go to college and everything's great. And now they're starting to hear that, wait a minute, you mean that somebody might not give me a job because of my color, or that I might get the job but I might be passed over, or they are allowed to say these things, or people that my mom or dad work with are on this line shouting against blacks and Jews and gays, and it's just really, the conversation is much more broad than I think it has been before.
Well, that's why we wanted to have you in as an expert on the issues, and as you said, increase the conversation, increase the dialogue. Again, Anna Maria College, just here in New England. I appreciate your coming down here today into Providence. We were going to Skype, but then the good professor said, I can just come right into the studio. I love when folks do that. So Tonisha, thank you very much.